All right, let's admit a few more people here. Looks like we have about 32 people, so I think that is enough to get started here. Thank you again, everyone, for joining today. This is our fourth in a series of 5 work group meetings as part of our rate reform studies for the long-term care services under MaineCare, with this work group specifically geared towards the rate setting activities. And today's work group is going to focus on risk adjustment. And really today we want to spend the good majority of today's time getting folks feedback and experience with different aspects of risk adjustment and MDS through your past experience. So a good portion of our time will be spent on the open discussion. But for the agenda, we'll again kind of do a quick walkthrough of the purpose of today's meeting and why we're here. We'll do a quick background into the current status of risk adjustment in the nursing facilities and the RCFs. We'll again have 40 minutes for open discussion today. I did send out an email. I apologize, it was not till this morning, but did send out an email to everybody with the 4 questions that we'd like to walk through today. And then again, please, after the meeting today, if you have a chance to go back and think about those questions or come up with additional comments, please feel free to email myself and Brian, whose email is on a slide later in the presentation, throughout the week with any additional comments. We'd love to hear from you. So, and then we'll close up with a quick update on the work group meeting schedule. We will have one more meeting after this. All right, why we are here today. So if you remember, we've kind of gone step by step throughout the rate setting methodology process. And today's focus is going to be on the risk adjustment portion of the rate setting process. And today, DHHS and Guidehouse are really seeking your feedback on your experiences with risk adjustment methodologies in the past and the current methodology being used, as well as other feedback, concerns, questions, suggestions that you have just on risk indicators in general and what we should be considering as we consider risk adjustment methodologies as part of our rate setting analysis. And again, this is the rate setting methodology chart that we've shown in the past. So you'll notice today's focus is on risk adjustment. We did move the risk adjustment up here to operating direct costs because that's where it's currently being applied. So to reflect the current methodology, we have moved it up to reflect the direct care services up here. So our focus today will be on risk adjustment. We've walked through the operating cost, capital cost adjustment, and total allowable costs on work group meeting number 2. We walked through trend and inflation was our focus on the last meeting. Today we'll talk through risk adjustment, and then we will have a final meeting later this month on value-based purchasing and quality. So just a quick recap of what the current status on nursing facility and RCF risk adjustment is you should all be familiar with. On RCFs, Maine currently uses a homegrown survey-based tool to assess risk adjustment, while on the nursing facility sides, MaineCare has used the RUGS 3 grouper methodology. An important note is that in October of 2019, CMS released a statement and a study saying that they're going to move away from the use of the RUGS 4 methodology and move to PDPM and the updated NDS 3.0. This was originally proposed, I believe it was in 2018 for the move in 2020. Ultimately, because of the pandemic, that did get delayed. So as of October 2023 is when they will end support of RUGS 4 and shift to a PDPM rate assessment, which they feel really focuses more on the patient-driven needs rather than more of a volume-based need. And then MaineCare, as part of our engagement, is interested in understanding risk adjustment for nursing facilities in a post-RUGS environment and exploring, in addition to RUGS, PDPM, what other options are available and what other options they may have going forward. Any questions before we kind of jump into the 4 discussion items? All right, again, feel free to jump in at any time with questions, but Danielle, I will turn it over to you to lead us through today's group discussion.
Thanks, Justin. So welcome back, everyone. This is our 4 out of 5. We kind of know the drill already, but we'll try to raise our hands if we want to speak. Please write all your answers in the chat, and Justin will go ahead and copy those onto our slides so we can take a look at them together. And make sure just to hear each other, respond to each other, be respectful. So we can move forward. And like he said, we have 4 questions here talking about the alternate payment methodologies for risk adjustments. So first, we're going to talk about MDS, then RUGs, then the CMS migration to PDPM, and then, what other circumstances which you think adjusters are not working properly. So we can go ahead and get started with our first question. So just take a moment to think about this. What have been your experiences with MDS up until now? And what are good things? What are bad things? Anything you want to note for us? So just take a second and you can write in the chat.
And as we've done in the past, we'll give you a few minutes here to respond, but if everyone could write their message into the chat, that would be preferred. If you do want to do verbal, I will do my best to record it word for word, but chat would be kind of the easiest approach. So we have 10 minutes per topic, so we will kind of give everyone a chance here to give us their thoughts, pros, cons, comments, questions regarding MDS.
Okay, we have 1 message so far. Okay. So Phil's looks like a con for MDS. David seems to agree with Phil. So we have 2 different comments so far about the documentation for this being an issue. So that's interesting. What else? We have a lot of folks here, so. So as far as the pros, so we have MDS aligns with service planning for each resident, and also that they capture ADLs in a robust way. Okay. A few more coming in. Mm-hmm. Maureen, so can you elaborate a little bit on your comment, perhaps, about the communication from CMS? So what are you referring to there?
Sure. So often there'll be updates that are changes made to how you answer certain sections of the MDS or interpretations. And it's kind of a hit or miss whether or not you get that information. It isn't always communicated in a clear manner. You'll have to go looking frequently for those changes.
Mhm. Okay.
And Wanda, absolutely you should. So if you'd like to forward the email from earlier this morning to your nurse leaders, we would gladly accept email or any kind of response that would be easiest for you.
Yeah. All right. How about David? I know you wrote a few different things in here. Do you want to elaborate at all?
Sure, I can try. I think really maybe overall where I'm going with kind of the cons is just that I think a big part of it is that it does require an individual's interpretation, particularly around the moods and behaviors. And, one of the things that we talk a lot about is, that's just John being John, or, Sue being Sue, or whoever it is. And, it's difficult to always capture that because that individual's behavior becomes their norm. And, we need to be able to capture all of that. And it's up for interpretation. And so there's a lot of training that we have to do to get into that. And it's just difficult. And then, again, we've talked a lot about temp agency and stuff like that, but clearly when you bring in temp agency, they're not aligned with all the additional training that we do on a regular basis. It takes a while for them to be helpful in capturing all of that. And if we don't capture it, we don't get paid for it.
Mhm.
And that's the other driver. Obviously it's important and we understand that, but at the end of the day, if it didn't get documented, then it didn't happen and we don't get paid for it.
And
Can I add to that?
what about your, oh, sorry, Phil, I just follow up for David. And what about your comment about PNMI?
Well, just, that it feels like most of it, some of it's related to, I'll say more, nursing home types of things. And maybe that there should be stuff because we are not a non-medical institution, that maybe there should be some other factors that maybe align better with a non-medical institution type of documentation. I don't know exactly what that is, but that's just, kind of a comment to think about.
And Phil, I interrupted you, sorry.
That what David spoke about was my initial comment about it's an ongoing challenge to get the CNA staff to document things accurately. If it isn't documented, we don't get paid for it. And I think that may attest to the complexity, and that an MDS system in theory is very good in that it measures acuity and you get paid. However, if it's too complicated or too detailed is where you start losing staff in the weeds, and they just take the easy way out, and you don't get, and the other thing is it's questionable if you really get the full credit of what your staff has to do for dementia patients. Because dementia patients need a lot of prodding, a lot of coaching, teaching, etc. And the MDS is more of, well, how much, you can guide a demented resident into brushing their teeth, and so you have to document that resident brushed their own teeth. It doesn't say that you had to instruct them to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, wet the toothbrush, put it in your mouth, move it up and down, spit it out. All of that time spent coaching is never really fully captured.
I just, one thing that I'd like to just say is I think that this is the people on this call are probably not the top people when it comes to discussing the MDS. I think many of us may have done MDSs, but are not experts, certainly not RAC certified or anything. And I feel like we need a little more time to get the experts engaged in this.
We can definitely talk at the end of the call about how much time you need. We are very open to giving you the time you need to consult with your clinical staff for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. This is Angela. Thank you for that comment about time. Some of us were just chatting amongst ourselves saying maybe we could do a short survey of our clinical leadership to give you some really detailed, specific feedback on this. I think that would serve all of us going forward. I know I don't feel comfortable answering this question, so. Great.
And this is David. Can I just add one more thing? Something else that we find, there's a lot of turnover in between our organizations, right? And when people go from a mostly private pay occupied types of resident care places, and then they have to come over to the main care side of it, the documentation is definitely not as heightened in the private pay because it's not dependent upon what they're reimbursed. And so, it's just another one of those challenges for us to try to be consistent with all of our staff. And again, they may come from some private pay facilities where they didn't really even have to document. It's just a challenge.
Thanks, David. So we'll just let Justin collect these last couple of comments and then we'll move on to the next question.
Oh. All right. All right, a lot of questions. Danielle, I think that is it for the MDS question. I think I got them all.
Great. Thank you.
Oh. One more from Wendy. On that, sorry. Okay. Oh, one more.
Okay. So now we're going to move to rugs. So what has been your experience with rugs so far?
Already got a few last questions here, so I'm trying to get those in.
And let us know, maybe, are you feeling the same? Maybe you feel like you're not the best person to answer this question as well. What's kind of your thought process here?
That's my feeling, is I'm not adequately versed to speak on that.
Are other people echoing that?
I guess I am, because my experience has really only been with rugs, very little with PDPM. You know, I would just say that rugs was known, PDPM was an unknown. My personal opinion was, it seemed to me that I was better able to predict payment with rugs than I was with PDPM, but that's just because I did not know PDM as well.
Okay.
But again, I think we need the experts.
Who else?
I kind of just do want to go back to Wanda's question that she had put for the last one, and this may not be the forum to answer it, but I think there's a lot of concern as to what is going to happen come October. You know, are we going to be working with two different systems and having to do the optional assessments? And it's going to be a lot of extra work on providers.
Yeah, we're very much aware that that's a concern. We haven't made any decisions about that, but certainly we're open to feedback about it and what you would suggest doing. There is going to be that period from October to January of 2025.
So I'm seeing it looks like one pro in the chat is that Rick mentioned, since rugs has been used for a while, it's been easier to train and retrain staff. Any other thoughts here? Or agreeance or disagreeance with what's been said so far? All right, well, Justin, I think we should just move on to the next question.
All right, and again, folks, if you do get a chance to forward to other team members and want to provide some feedback, please feel free to do that throughout the week. I
All
assume
right,
you may have a similar thoughts on PDPM where folks just are not that familiar with it, but we will, Danielle, we can open it up for questions and comments.
yes. So thoughts here. So any pros or cons that come top of mind to the CMS migration to PDPM? Okay, so Maureen says it went a lot smoother than she anticipated. What else?
Thank you.
Okay,
Detailed.
we love that. Okay, so PDPM is a more precise way to measure resource utilization and better reflects patient characteristics, but it's designed to measure the characteristics of a more acute population and therefore may not transfer as easily to a less acute custodial population. When the transition to PDPM happened, there was a learning curve. Understood. And then Wanda says PDPM is better aligned with SNF service capture than for capturing long stay resident acuity. Okay. And then it looks like Tammy has a similar comment that PDPM is not designed for NIFs or RCF level of care. Wanda, do you maybe want to talk for a second about your comment?
Wanda, you might be on mute. We can't hear you.
Hi, sorry, I wasn't sure if you said my name or not.
Mm.
You can hear me now, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that the PDPM system works very well for capturing the diagnoses and the care needs of a skilled resident stay that's payable by the Medicare system. But as others have said in this chat box, it doesn't do well capturing the acuity needs, the ADL needs, the behaviors, the moods that we would typically be caring for in a NIF stay, so a long-term care stay. And I think as Tammy said, or the residential care setting. So I don't know that the system per se would be terrible to embrace as long as the criteria that aligns with the payment could be customized for a long-term care stay. Does that better answer the question?
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Yes, and that is very helpful feedback and certainly something we will address as we get into kind of making decisions on the risk adjustment and present results later on down the line.
Rebecca, did you have anything you could add to here? I know you had some really good text for us.
Well, I can't take all the credit. My Cracker Jack clinical reimbursement coordinator pulled this out in about 18 minutes. So really the thanks just go to her. But just I will echo, it is really, really critical for our clinical reimbursement folks to be able to input, because that's the type of context that we would be able to glean from this conversation. So I just would echo what her thoughts are in communicating this, but you know, education and continuing education as it pertains to the ICD coding and diagnosis codes is critical moving forward to this. So this is the benefit of getting their expertise in these types of conversations.
For sure. No, yeah, we really appreciate it.
it's Wanda again. The other thing I'm thinking of too is there are certain elements of the PDPM payment system where the payments gradually taper off the longer the stay continues. And that type of payment tapering off would not be appropriate in the long-term care setting.
Excellent point, Wanda.
Anyone else?
Going once, going twice. All right, I think we can move to the last one then, Danielle.
Yes, thanks. So last question here, are there circumstances for which you think adjusters are not working properly?
Could you please elaborate on what you're asking here? I'm not sure what you mean by when you say adjusters are not working properly.
Took the question out of my mouth.
I think, Phil, when you mentioned dementia not really being well captured, that was an example. So are there other conditions, situations where you think the adjuster isn't working for that specific condition or situation?
That's a really good example. I think also what we just heard about the longer stays sounds relevant here. Tapering off. What other things do we think aren't working?
And this is David, potentially what things could work better, whether it be on PDPM, the transition from rugs to PDPM. Are there things that could be more advantageous to how you provide care?
Okay, so Phil mentioned coaching. Phil, do you want to chat about that for a sec?
Well, I was just putting down in the chat what I said earlier about having a demented resident brush their own teeth. And, I mean, the requirement is that the residents do as much care for themselves as is practicable. And you can coach a demented resident to do a lot of things, but I assure you, you will spend more time coaching than if you would have done it for them. So if you're looking to identify resource utilization, the dementia situation is a perfect example where the system just doesn't capture it.
Here we go. Couple more.
Perfect. David, do you want to jump in about the time sensitivity?
Yeah, and again, I'm not the expert on this, but I do know that, in order for the score, which ultimately translates into, a rate, in order to increase a score on something, it has to occur so many times over a period of days or weeks. And I don't remember what those specifically are, but if you fall short, and I even think if somebody were to have to go to the hospital in that period, I think it starts over. So it's just a complexity of it, that, somebody may be trending, and or it could be on our staff, that then they miss a day, you get a new staff or somebody like that, and we may miss period. And there are exceptions and there's ways around it, but it really comes back to, it requires really an MDS expert to be reviewing what the staff are documenting on a regular basis to ensure that we aren't missing something. If that helps or not.
Mhm. Right, Wanda, it sounds like your comment's similar to that about staff documentation, which we've heard a few times during this session.
I get this one. Yes. Anything else, folks? We have gone through this much quicker than expected. Obviously, we know folks want additional time to speak with their experts, but any final comments on adjusters that you think may not be working properly? Get this one.
This is David. I'll add one more. The other thing is a new resident that comes in. If they miss the initial window. So when a new resident comes in, we submit our MDSs in March and September for the prior 6 months. And that's what it's based on. And, if you get somebody who is a more complex resident, you may be working with them for 6 months where you didn't get reimbursed for it. So the look back period of, when that complex resident comes in, the complexity or the score is not necessarily always aligned for when they're in-house.
Comment?
Go ahead, Phil.
All of these different systems are trying to capture or what time, what resources are being utilized for purposes of reimbursement. I'm a strong proponent of cost reimbursement for the whole bailiwick. I mean, back in the day when everything was cost reimbursement, the driver to keep your costs down was your private pay margin. So even though you had a carte blanche from the state to do whatever you needed to in the name of resident care, it still was a break-even operation, and your only profit came from your self-pays, or in these days under the Medicare skilled. And that profit driver held costs down. Now, I think the state or maybe the country went away from cost reimbursement in the early 80s, because we've been going through a period of 12, 14, 16% inflation, and the governments were tired of having to go back to the legislative bodies for more money because they had underestimated inflation. And so they wanted to get into a prospective payment where, okay, here's your money, that's all you're getting, make ends meet or die. And, you know, we've migrated to where we have systems that try to capture what our resources are that are being used. I, for one, would always vote to go back to 100% cost reimbursement and trust that the driver to have profits from your private pay by keeping your cost of operation reasonable would eliminate a lot of complication. It would eliminate MDS coordinators too, you know, and anybody that's on the government side of policing the MDS. So I just kind of throw that back out that, and I don't know if there's a federal mandate that it has to be this way, but I always thought cost reimbursement, we spent what we needed to spend to do a decent job and nothing more, because we wanted some self-pay profits.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you, Phil. I mean, I'll just note that I think the other policy objective when case mix and prospective payment emerged was to reduce days awaiting placement in hospitals, that the concept being, you know, if nursing homes were paid more for higher acuity patients, it would be easier to take those folks out of the hospital. So lots of policy goals here, but your point's well taken. It would be simpler. It'd be a lot less documentation, et cetera.
All right, and Wanda, we will post this presentation. I'm going to clean it up a little bit, but we'll post this with all the comments in it. And I will send that over to DHHS, and I believe they will post it on the website as they usually do. So you'll have that. And then what we'll also do, if we do get a bunch of follow-up questions or comments after you have a chance to discuss with your team members, we will summarize those into a Word document to make sure everyone gets to see everyone's comments and questions as we get follow-up. So in the past, we've usually only gotten a question or two after the meeting, but it sounds like this time we may get a good amount. So we encourage you to send those hopefully by the end of this week, and then we will summarize and send that out to the group. It looks like Amanda just mentioned that it'll be posted by Friday.
Yes.
Do you have time for a quick question? You mentioned I think we have one or two of these meetings left and scheduled. Will there be opportunity for this group to come back and comment or review whatever is going to be developed for a draft rate system at that point in time? So I feel like we're providing a lot of input and thoughts into this, but will there be opportunity on the back end as well to be able to provide our commentary and our thoughts regarding what's developed?
Yes, and Paul can comment as well, but these first 5 that we're kind of referring to as the 5 work group meetings were more based on methodology and feedback, and to make sure that we hear your thoughts and what you think should be done. After we get into we've just determined a methodology and we've set rates on the back end, then we'll start to schedule additional meetings where we walk you through that methodology, walk you through the steps of rate development, and you'll actually see obviously numbers and all of that good stuff. So when we refer to the 5 work group meetings, we're really kind of just talking about the methodology and feedback portion.
Thank you.
Angela, you were going to jump in. I'm guessing about the time frame here. What do you need?
Thank you, Paul. No, I know, Justin, you mentioned a couple of times getting feedback within the week. If we could have perhaps a little bit longer, maybe 2 weeks would be great, so that we could get a survey out to our members. We could try and rush that, maybe 10 days. What's reasonable for you all?
Yeah,
Well,
I think go ahead, Paul.
Well, I'm thinking, first of all, I mean, being able to provide you with this text maybe sooner than Friday, rather than waiting for it to be officially posted or whatever. I would be comfortable just sending you these slides where we cut and paste your comments, even before they're cleaned up, with the big caveat that you understand they're not the final formal because they're not clean, right? And then we can proceed with our cleaning process and post something final on Friday as mentioned. And then that'll give you what you need to get feedback from your staff. And if the Guidehouse team is okay with it, I think going to the following Friday would give you time to get the survey out, get the results back. So that would be what, June 16th? Justin, does that work?
I think that would be great. Yeah, we will, as long as everyone's okay with it, I will respond to this morning's email with these slides. Again, as Paul mentioned, I'll put a caveat on there that it's draft and subject to change and not edited, etc. But I will just respond to everybody with these slides, and then we'll get the posted version. And yeah, if you could do it by next Friday, that'd be great. But I also want to make sure, obviously we want the feedback as quickly as possible. But if you have additional thoughts along the way, feel free to send it in. It doesn't mean we'll necessarily include it, but we're open to your feedback throughout this process, as we're still kind of in the methodology and rate setting development phase. So we would prefer it sooner rather than later. And if you are going to do a survey, if you could try to do that by the 16th, that would be great. If it's going to take a little longer, just let me know. But again, if you have additional feedback throughout the next month or two that you want us to consider, feel free to send it in, and we will look at it and think about it as we go through this process.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments regarding today's topic?
Do we have a date and a top? Oh, I'm right ahead of you. I was gonna ask the topic for the next one, Justin. I'm pushing, sorry.
You do it, no worries. So updated work group meeting schedule. So today, June 5th, we did the risk adjustment, and then everyone should have June 26th on their calendars for the value-based purchasing. Don't remember the exact time. I think it may be 11 o'clock again, but everyone should have that. I believe Brian sent that out to everybody. And that will kind of wrap up and conclude the methodology and comment period meetings. And then as we get closer to having rates completed, we will start to get additional follow-up at least 3 weeks in advance for each meeting as we kind of go through the rate, what methodology we've chosen, and kind of in presenting the rates to you. And then again, please feel free to include myself and Brian on any comments, questions. I've included our emails here, and then again, I'll respond to everybody's email this morning with the comments that everyone posted today so that you have those. And feel free to give us any additional feedback or comments that you have. And then just the contacts here at Guidehouse. So we have 10 minutes left. Is there anything else folks wanted to discuss or bring up, or we can give everyone 10 minutes back on their Monday?
I have to
have one comment before we depart, and this would be to ask Guidehouse or ask the DHHS what vetting process will they be using once you develop rates to determine whether that meets the goals of the state. And when I think of this in terms of adequacy and sustainability. So if the rates were too low, you may have some unintended consequences with providers no longer able to provide services. And if the rates were adequate for all providers on day one, would they be adequate in year 3? So I would like to hear from DHHS on what the thinking might be related to that. It'd be terrific if they had a chance to comment on that now, but I understand you might be a little flat-footed and want some time to think about that. But I know that that's one of the major sources of concern by our industry as we move forward in this journey.
Yeah, I can comment a little bit, Wanda, and you know, don't quote my specific words, but just in terms of the principles you're laying out, I mean, we agree that adequacy and sustainability are definitely on the list, and then we have some others as well. We're interested in quality, which is why we're going to have the value-based payment conversation. We're interested in efficiency and how you derive that. And we have said, and as part of efficiency, we've said we're interested in reducing administration for both you and for us. But I put that in the efficiency category. So those are the broad principles we're shooting for here.
Could I just ask, would it be possible to get the agenda for the value-based purchasing and quality discussion in a more timely manner so that we could be prepared?
We'll do our best, Maureen, for sure, to get something out. And I will tell you that you may be aware, if you're, you know, this organization and others have also representatives on our Quality and Innovation Council. And we're having a meeting tomorrow focused on quality measures, and that'll be kind of a warm-up in some ways for the meeting with you all. So we're hoping to be able to take the feedback from tomorrow's meeting and use that as a good starting point for the conversation with you all. How quickly we can turn all that around and get it out to you is a question, but that's what we're shooting for. We think that conversation, it needs a lot of discussion and thought, and we know that there's a huge range of opinions, like even on just what the quality, what the clinical measures are that are most appropriate to look at, you know. So we expect that there may be other, we may want to do other special topic meetings with you or others as well as we go along, but for sure, I mean, your feedback is well taken. We will try to get as much to you as early as we can so that we can have a good conversation with you around quality at the end of the month.
Any other questions or comments?
Paul, I appreciate you reminding us about what the overarching goals for this workforce is, or work group is. I would ask if you could be a bit more specific around what strategies would you use and what tests would you employ to make sure that those goals are met. And again, not something that you have to answer now, but I would love to hear more about what the department is thinking in the next meeting or so, just to kind of give us a flavor for, you know, how will the department be evaluating against those goals.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, last chance. Anybody questions or comments? All right, not seeing any. So I want to thank everyone for coming on Monday. Some really great feedback today, really good discussion. Again, we look forward to any additional comments you may have from your coworkers or your experts on these topics. And I will respond right after this to everyone with the email with the comments and questions in it. So please feel free to let me know if you have any questions after you have a chance to review that. And thank you everyone for your time today and have a great week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.